here. I am recording this session. I just want to let you know at the start. I know that this is double booked with another session. We kind of envision this being a choral track and then Mr. Curry's session being an instrumental track. So I appreciate you taking the time and coming over here. I'm going to go ahead and record it and then send this link out to everyone afterward in case they wanted to see both. Thanks again for being here. A little bit about myself. I'm Matt Carlson. I teach high school choir and fourth grade general music and choir at Bermudian Springs School District. Shout out to Sarah Throckmorton, who teaches middle school choir. She's hanging out on this Zoom here too. I do a lot of work with Gettysburg Children's Choir. I went to Gettysburg College, so I went to college in District 7. I also have a master's degree in choral conducting from Michigan State University. And if you auditioned for district choir, you might be recognizing my voice. Hello, this is the Alto 2 audition track for the 2020-2021 District PMEA District 7 Choir audition. Thank you very much. Relax, take a breath, and we move to Reinberger's Kyrie. That was recorded in this very room, on this very mic, with these very headphones. We were talking as an exec board on what we're going to offer at this virtual festival. And we were thinking about what are things that we can offer the students in the district that we wouldn't normally get to offer, things that are extra that don't really always find their way into a school choral program. And composing and arranging is one of my passions. It's something that I do a lot for my choirs. And we were thinking that it might be something that people that audition for district choir or just people in District 7 in general might be interested in checking out and maybe don't get to look at quite as much in their typical year. So what I want to do today is show you a bit of my process. That's why I have the fancy mic and the headphones going on here, because I want to show you how I both arrange it and how I record it. Take you through how I would go about arranging a song a little bit. And maybe you do some arranging of your own, maybe you do some writing of your own. Maybe you'd like to try it yourself. Maybe you're just interested to see how it works. All of those are cool with me. We're just going to have some fun and learn a little bit today. So I've chosen a song for you, and there's a little bit of a backstory of why I chose this song as our kind of sandbox this morning. I work a lot, as I said, with Gettysburg Children's Choir, and they always do a performance for Martin Luther King Day. There's a big celebration of his life and work at Gettysburg College every year. We invite Morgan State University's choir up to perform, and they always blow the doors off the place. So we're always on the lookout for powerful songs of social justice. And when I heard this song, I immediately texted Dr. Talbot and was like, dude, we're doing this. So the song is Nina Cried Power. It's by Hosier. Might be familiar with Hosier. His biggest hit was Take Me to Church a few years ago. So it's Nina Cried Power. Nina is Nina Simone, who's a huge advocate for social justice. It features Mavis Staples, who sang for Martin Luther King and was a voice of the civil rights movement throughout the 60s up to today. And when we think about all that our country's been through as of late with the movement for Black Lives, it's really a song that needs to be sung. So if you haven't heard it, I'm excited that I get to introduce it to you. Even if you have, what would be good for you to do as we listen to the whole thing is be thinking about what might make this song a good one to arrange. And that's one of the first steps, is picking a song to arrange. So some of the things that I think about is, am I obsessed with the song? Is it one that I constantly have to listen to over and over again? Is it one that I want to listen to over and over again? Because to get a good arrangement, you have to live with it for a lot of hours. So if you're only lukewarm about it and you think you might get sick of it, pick a different song. Another question to think about is the song meaningful to you? Is it meaningful to the people that will sing it? Is it meaningful to the people that will listen to it? Another one is, will your singers be physically possible to perform it? Is it too difficult? Is it not challenging enough, or will it get boring? Do you have the right voice types? If it's a song that has crazy low bass, do you have a bass that can sing that low? Are there opportunities in the song for the whole choir so they don't just sing do the whole time in the background? Because that can get kind of boring. So with that in mind, let me share some screen here and take a listen to this song and think about how you might go about arranging it. I hope you agree it's a pretty amazing song. And it still moves me after having spent like 50 hours with it and arranging it and hearing it again after a while. It's very powerful, no pun intended. What I hear in this tune is the text is it just reaches out and grabs you through the screen. And I tried to show some of the genius annotations to give you a little bit more background on all these artists that he calls out. So he's calling out all these artists that have come before that have been musical agents of change. And it's such a meaningful call to action. It's really inspiring when you hear it. And the video is pretty impactful too, to just watch people having this visceral reaction to the music. It's pretty amazing. Another thing that interested me about it is the opportunity for multiple soloists. So Hozier sings the solo a lot, and then he also had Mavis Staples in there. And then there's really good background vocals throughout the verse and the chorus. Hozier multi-tracks himself, and how he did that in the recording session, he's just riffed and laid down a bunch of different tracks and slapped it all together, which is kind of what you do when you make an arrangement of yourself too. When you listen to it, you're like, I want to be in that choir. I want to sing in that choir. So now, if you have a song selected, the next question is, where do you start? So the first place you should really start is with copyright. And if there are other teachers in the Zoom, you know what I'm saying with copyright's been a big question for us as we're in the Zoom age and the recording project age. So the legal way to do this is to secure permission from the copyright holder for an arrangement. And I'm going to put a link in the chat that has information about copyright. I just sent it. It's produced by the National Federation of State High School Associations, which has been a Bible of sorts about copyright for me as I've been approaching my job these days. So what you have to do is you have to figure out who owns the rights to the song. And there's a site called Songfile where you can search for the title and it will give you the copyright holder. And then you have to get in touch with that copyright holder about your project. And you be as specific as possible when you reach out to them. You tell them how many performances you're going to do, who the dates are, who the audience will be, how it will be distributed, if it will be a recording or a video. The more specific you are in your request, the better. And there's different types of licenses that come into play with the different types of things you're going to do. If it's just a public performance, there's a separate license for that. There's a mechanical license that's for making a recording. And then there's what's called a sync license. Sync license meaning if you're putting audio and video together. So that's to be on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, anywhere where it would be videoed. So you do need permission if you're going to share a video in any capacity. So that's just kind of the legal disclaimer that you have to get out of the way with this kind of stuff. So now that we have that, where do you actually start? So for a song like this, the first place I start is understanding the message and the meaning. Live with the text, unpack the text, get in the composer's head as much as you can. Pull up those lyrics. And for this kind of song, I had to figure out who were all these people who's calling out: Pete Seeger, Marvin Gaye, Billie Holiday, Patti Smith, Bob Dylan, B.B. King, and how they used music to create change and to call for change in our country. And that gets to the core of what the singer should feel when they sing it and what the audience should feel when they listen to it. They should feel more informed about our country, inspired to help change it, to be ready for action, to be woke. And as Hozier said, it's not the waking, it's the rising. It's one thing to be aware of something, but it's another thing to do something about it. It's one thing to wake up, but then you actually have to get out of bed and do something. So pretend you spent some time with the text and you understand it deeply now. And then the next thing that you do is, for me, it's to go to notation, because I have a big notational background. Now, I'm going to do a bit of notation here, but I'm also going to do later on, I'm going to go away from notation a little bit, because everyone comes to notation with different ability levels. I have a huge theory background. I'm a big theory nerd, and I think a lot in notation. So I'm going to show you that method, but I'll also show you a way where you can just record it right into a digital audio workstation. So I have a Sibelius project up here. I am a Sibelius user. Sibelius is a notation software. This is a paid software where I paid a lot of money because I do self-published compositions and like sell them for money. So I paid for the good software. The other good software is Finale, which you're probably aware of and may have worked before. There's other paid ones that Notion is one that has come up in the past few years. Dorico is another new one. Free ones include MuseScore or Noteflight. A lot of people are using MuseScore. That one's pretty big. When college students observe me, they are definitely MuseScore users. They can all do what you need to do. So when you're setting up your score, it's good to say what the song is. And then as a placeholder, I just put over here, I just put the person that wrote the song, and I'll just do arranged by me for now. You have to figure out what the tempo and the time are. So let me pull up the original recording again that I shouldn't have closed, and we will look into that together. And I might have to mute and add. Yep,
we made you
mute and add. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the way. Do, 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 do. So this is where theory chops start to come into play. You should start to hear it's in a minor key. Skip it. So that first chord in the piano has that chord. So we're looking for a minor key. And then you also want to look for the time signature. So this default template, I happen to be in 6/8. The song is not in 6/8 though. You can tell that it has that 4 on the floor feeling. 2, 1, it's not for going of the light, it's not the opening of. So we're going to go ahead and set the time signature up to 4/4. I'm fast at Sibelius, so don't be discouraged if you're like, I'm not that fast. Let's figure out what that opening chord is. So we know we need a minor chord. I'm just fumbling around until I find the right place. It's not the way. Too high. It's not the closer. It's not the way. I think that was it. Let's see. It's not the waking, it's the rise. It's not the shade. So it's F minor. Spoiler alert, I already knew that. But that's how you would find it. You just fumble around on the piano till you find it. So we're going to put the key as F minor. And then we're going to find the tempo. You might have done this already in your life before. So if you get a good metronome app, there's a way you can tap tempo to set it. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromised. So the way I do it is I just sing the song, or better yet, play the original recording and tap. I think it's close. I like to press play on the recording, press play on the metronome with the original recording and see if it's something like 95. I always like to put a text for the tempo that captures the mood of the song at the beginning. I'm just going to put woke right now as a placeholder because that's kind of what people should feel when they hear it and sing it. It's nice to give tempo markings a little more description if you can. The next thing I would do is I would transcribe the melody into the solo part. Because for me, I have to figure out how the melody is going before I'm going to put chords underneath it and where that fits in the bar, because that's going to influence where I ask the singers to sing. So let me play that first melody again, and we'll unpack it a little bit. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the waking, it's the rising. This is a tough melody to transcribe. I picked a hard example for us because it's rhythmically so syncopated. And when Hosier sang it, he didn't really write it down, I assume. He just went for it and did what felt right. So let's hear it again. It's not the waking, it's the rising. So what I hear is that the first note, well, there's a bar of drum, and then that first note he sings comes on the and of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's not the way. 1 and 2 and. So I'm going to put it's not the, since we're in F, I'm going to give him 3 Fs. It's not the way. Then it goes fast, so I have to do 16ths. It's not the way. And then he holds the A of waking a little longer. It's not the way. So we're going to tie that over and find where he does the king. It's not the waking, it's the rye. It's not the waking, it's king. It's was right before the next beat. So I'm going to do something like this. Waking. It's not the waking, it's the rye. It's not the waking, it's the rye. It's not the waking, it's the rye. The next the came after the next beat. So I might do it another 16th and tie it over. It's not the waking, it's the rye. The rye, the rye, the rye. And then the zing of rising came after the next downbeat. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the waking, it's the rising. After beat 2. Rising. So let me put that in right after beat 2 here. And you have to do that with every phrase of the whole song. It takes a long time if you're going to transcribe the melody. Then you throw lyrics in. It's not the way king. He kind of sings kin because he's Irish. So you can either do the kin apostrophe if you really want him to say waken, or you could do ing and just assume that they will not do that, or that they'll do kin. It's the rising. It's not the waking, it's the rising. Now, something to notice about the way I notated this melody is you always want to show where each beat is. Here's beat one and. Here's beat two and. And instead of something like this, so a dotted eighth would have the same note value, but now this rhythm becomes very challenging to read when it's all barred across. So similar, if I change 2/16 to an 8, okay, now I have no idea what that means. When you hit play on MuseScore, play on Sibelius, it'll sound right. But when a singer looks at that, they'll be like, what are you doing? It should look like this. You should always, this is what good notation looks like, where you're clearly defining where each beat is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, realistically, when someone looks at that and sings it, they will listen to the recording and to help get the feel of it. But when you're trying to count it out, you have to show your singers exactly where the beat is. And if you don't, they're going to be like, what? So let me just copy paste from the finished version the rest of that solo part, because you don't need to watch me transcribe solos for like a half hour. So when I did the whole thing, it ended up like this. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It should be tied. So that takes a long time to figure all that out. And for a lot of arrangers, they will not do anything that I just showed you. They will just say, I know that the soloist is going to learn it and sing the right rhythms, so I'm just not going to waste time and do any of that. And that's totally valid. But I just wanted to show you, if you are arranging it for someone and you don't work with them and you're sending it to them, it might be good to give specific notation, or if you have specific indications of who's singing what solo when. What some people do is they'll just go ahead and delete the solo line like that, like the, like, oh, did it go? Yep, it went like that. And they'll just say, whoops. And they'll just say, solo starts here. Or maybe they'll say, Hosier solo starts here. And then later on down the road in Mavis Staples, they'll just put Mavis joins. So figure out what you're going to do with the solo. Then the next thing that you do is you have to figure out what the chords are to start to build what the choir is going to do underneath. And to do that, I have a very advanced system that I will show that I spent ages perfecting. Hashtag sarcasm. Because here's what I do. New tab, Nina, cried, power, chords. Look, I even spelled it wrong, and it doesn't matter because Google corrects you. ultimateguitar.com, my favorite. This is what I actually do. Someone that has 2 music degrees and sells self-published compositions, I go to Ultimate Guitar to look up what the chords are. Don't be too proud. Someone has done the work for you already. Now, one thing you might want to do is close the add of 6/9 because we don't need to learn about 6/9. Or was that X? Or I don't know who they are. I try not to populate my brain with that kind of information. So when you do that, you have the Nina Cried Power chords here already. And someone has done it for you. Now, something you need to be careful of if you're using Ultimate Guitar and you don't have guitar experiences, they will transpose the chords sometimes. So here it says key F minor. Ah, they've done that work for you. A lot of times they'll put tempo here too. But you have to notice that maybe they put a capo on the first fret. This is what's nice about zooming from home. Sometimes you just have a guitar lying around. So here's normal E minor. It's not the waking, it's the rising. So in order for a guitarist to play better, sometimes it's more comfortable to put a capo on the guitar, which raises the entire instrument by a half step. So what you do is you put your fingers on E minor, but when you play that, it's going to sound like F minor. It's not the waking, it's the rising. So that's the way the guitarists have figured out how to play that song easier. And there's a way on Ultimate Guitar to transpose it. So we have to do is hit the transpose button, and then that will put the first chord as F minor. And then you can use that to start to fill in your chords. I always start with the bass line. This is kind of also where theory chops come into play. I'm going to do that share portion of screen again so you can see chords. And ooh, that doesn't look good. So you can see chords and Sibelius at the same time. Doot, 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 doot. Yeah. So F minor. So that means we're going to be as basic as possible for the basic. Man, I'm hilarious. So we're going to do F. Oh, something I do like to do actually is type the chords right into the Sibelius. So it goes F minor, then it says D sharp, but D sharp is the same as E flat. So we really want to call that an E flat major chord. C sharp is the same as D flat. No, not D C. D flat, D flat, and then the chords move faster. G sharp equals A flat. Ultimate Guitar Robot is bad at transposition. C. A sharp minor, we want B flat minor, F minor. And then you fill in your bass. Do, do, D flat, A flat. Whoa, that's not it. I meant half note. D, D, D flat, A flat, C, B flat. Let's go low F because basses sometimes like low F, but sometimes they don't. You have to know who your basses are. And then we got our bass line in. As a disclaimer, I'm very fast at this because I've done it for years. So if you're slower, it's okay. Take your time. And then once you have your bass line in, you want to start throwing in your other voices. So you have to know that in your F minor triad, an F minor triad always is built with F, or an F triad is always built with FAC. And E flat is always EGB. And D flat is always DFA. And whoa. Let me just continue this trend here. If you have music theory chops, you may have drilled these already. When I was in college, my professor made me go EGB, 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 FAC, 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 DFA, DFA, and just chant them. So then as soon as you see a chord, you know exactly what notes are in it. So once you have your chords, you have to pick what voice part is going to sing what note and give a note to each voice part and make every note happen in the chord. So I'm going to fill those in now. We're going to give the tenors the C because that's a good tenor note for tenors. We're going to give the altos another F because it's usually good to double the root of the chord. We're going to give sopranos the A flat. So now you've created a chord, F minor chord. And then we're going to do the same. Hang on, I'm tangled up in my headphone wire. Okay, I'm free. And now we're going to do the same thing for this next chord. We're just going to take everyone down a step. E, B flat, E flat, G. Doubled E flat, doubled root. And then one on the fifth, one on the third. And then we're going to do a D flat major. Looks like we can still keep going down one step. Now A flat, there's A flat in the D flat chord and an A flat chord, so tenors can stay. Altos can go down a step and sopranos down a step. Now here we have C major, so we're going to need an E natural. The sopranos are already on E flat, so I'm just going to kick them up a half step. Tenors are close to a G, so I'm going to put them right on the G right below it. Altos are already on a C, so I'm going to keep them there. You always want to do not have really jumpy parts. If you can move by step, do it. If you can keep a common tone, even better. And then we have B flat minor. So we need B flat, D flat, F. Sopranos are close to F. They're on E natural, so I'm going to pop them up a step for F. And then altos are close to D flat. And tenors are close to F. Then it's B flat, F, D flat, F. Well, then that doesn't have a doubled root. So I'm actually going to do that and have the tenors go up a third. That's not a crazy big leap. If you saw that as a choir singer, you'd be like, all right, I can handle that. Then we need an F chord, so we got F minor, so we got F, and then tenors are close to C. Well, maybe I don't want that because altos are closer to C. And then tenors are going to go down a step. Sopranos are already on F. And now we've built our chords. Let's hear what they sound like with the robot choir. Sounds good to me. I realized I didn't do these chords long enough, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm over it. Okay, goodbye, Sibelius. Now, do we care about saving it? Fine, it will be a record. Next time I open it, I'll be like, oh, look, it's the chords I showed them. So now let's get away from notation. And now let's just record it. So to record, you're going to need a digital audio workstation. I am a Logic user. I paid the $300. I didn't pirate it. Most everything I'm going to show you today, you can do in GarageBand and Logic. Other digital audio workstations include Pro Tools is the other paid one, paid professional one. You might not need Logic or Pro Tools at this point in your life. If you really get going, it's good to invest. So there's Logic, Pro Tools, GarageBand. Ableton's another one that has like less paid versions. There's online ones like Soundtrap or BandLab, which you might have been using for Zoom School these days. So what I want to do is record what I just notated. So now I need to set up my Logic project. Something to keep in mind is I have relative pitch, which is not perfect pitch, but pretty close. So I can hear pitches in my head and know where I am. What you would probably want to do if you were to embark on this is export a recording from your notation and drop that into this second program and sing along with that to keep yourself in tune. But for the purposes of demonstration, I can just lay it down, and that created weird echoes for you just now, probably. So I guess I should do the solo first. Can you hear me? Good, thank you. So I'm going to turn on a metronome. Is there a weird echo? Okay, good. When I tested this with my mom yesterday, there was a weird echo, and then I fixed it. My mom helped me fix my Zoom. So I want to set up the tempo, which in Logic is up here. And we can't hear that. I need to make this bigger. Hang on a moment. Okay, I don't need portion of screen anymore. This needs to be larger, so I can do that and tell it to click while I'm recording. Okay. That's still, I guess it's fine. So I'm going to record myself singing the solo. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. You always want to use a click track. Sometimes you have to make your own. So now that I have my solo, I'm going to sing along with that and record the bass. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. I kind of had the F. Let's throw some tenor in. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. Some alto. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And soprano. Let's get some thirds so it sounds like minor chords. It's not the wake. I might have just spoken in that recording. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. Woo, my falsetto's not as warmed up as I thought it was, but it's fine. Here's all four parts. And it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. So that's a very acceptable introduction. That would work really nicely for, sorry, there is an echo for me, but not for you. So I'm going to take these off so I can not sound like my speech is slurred. That would work really nicely for the introduction. But if that were the entire piece and you just went ooh the whole time, your singers might get a little bored. So sometimes it's nice to spice things up a little bit. So I'm going to just improvise and try to come up with a new tenor part because I pretend to be a tenor sometimes. I'm really a baritone. But anyway, a good phrase that someone told me once was, composition is frozen improvisation. And improvisation is composition in real time. The way composers figure out how they're going to write music is they just mess around and then write it down and freeze it and save it for later. So that's kind of how you arrange, too. You just mess around until you find something you like. So I'm going to sing a tenor part that has a little bit more moving lines to it, and that might be more fun to sing and see what I come up with. And I'm not going to write anything down because you don't necessarily need to. Okay, where am I? Yeah, it's fine. Ooh. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. We'll see how that goes with everything else. How about some alto? Let's see what I come up with there. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. That was all right. There's a moment in there I didn't like, but that's okay. You can just re-record it if you want. Let's see what I do for soprano. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. Let's see what happens if I do all my improvisey ones. I think it's that. I'm not going to do the bass. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. That sounds kind of cool. It's a little more interesting to listen to, I think. There's moments that it gets a little clashy, so I would go back and find where those clashies were and smooth those out, erase those times I drew outside the lines. But overall, I think that's starting to sound a little more interesting. So then the spoiler is I've already arranged this whole song. So what I want to do is show you the finished version. Because if you had another, I don't know, 30 hours or so, you could watch me arrange this whole song. Ain't nobody got time for that. So now I'm going to show you the finished version. This is what we did with Gettysburg Children's Choir. I have the score and the Logic project. And I'll play the whole thing for you and then just take you through how I made some of the decisions that I made. Setting up this screen share. We're going to share this window with audio. Yep. Yep. Good, good, good. Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it once it starts. Yeah.
It's not the waking, it's the rising. It is the grounding of a foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the lie. It's not the opening of eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the shade, we should be past it. It's the light and it's the obstacle that casts it. It's the heat that drives the light. It's the fire it ignites. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the song, it is the singing. It's the heaven of the human spirit ringing. It's the bringing of the light. It's the bearing of the right. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry, power, power, power. Nina cried, power. Billy cried, power. Babies cried, power. And I could cry, power, power. Curtis cried, power. Patty cried, power. Nina cried, power. It's not the war, but what's behind it. What's behind your war? Lord, the fear of our man is mere assignment, and everything that we're denied by keeping the divide. It's not the waking, it's the rise. We see rise, we rise. And I could cry, power, power, power. Nina cried, power. Lennon cried, power. James Brown cried, power. And I could cry, power, power, power. Baby cried, power. Jody cried, power. Nina cried, and I could cry, power. Power has been cried by those stronger than me. Straight into the face that tells you to rattle your chains if you love being free. We could cry, power, 'cause power is my love when my love reaches to me. James Brown cried, power. Cena cried, power. Bobby cried, power. Power, power. James cried, power. Lake cried, power. Patty cried, power. Billy, Dylan, Woody, Nina cried, power.
Yeah, the sopranos on the top C at the end for the fireworks. So that's what I came up with as the final version of that song. So now let me just take you through it a little bit. I shouldn't have closed it. And show you how I came up with what I did. Oh, where'd it go? No, I don't want to open a previous version. It wouldn't be a Zoom presentation if you didn't have technical difficulties. Am I right? Classic. The teacher doesn't know how to work Zoom. Here it comes. Here it comes. Wait for it. Yeah. Okay. I put it to this view instead of the printed view because it just makes it a little easier to see. So here's how I went about doing this one. So I chose mournful as a tempo marking because that's kind of what it sounded like at the beginning. I wanted people to start with a little bit of a whoo, just a little bit of breath would sound nice. Thank you for the countertenor compliment there, Jonah. I appreciate your support. So you can see what I came up with in the final version was very similar to what I demoed to you. It's like I planned it. I did put the F, the high F in parentheses. So what I'm indicating here is if you can, I'd love the low F for basses, but if you want to do high F instead, you go right ahead. And I decided to do the chords once and then have the solo come in because I started without the drums just to make it a little bit more choral and to really get the words to come out because it's such powerful text here. Then we repeat that. Then here is where you can hear almost like I was improvising. I'm going to play a little bit of that. So notice how the soprano part, it like bounces between each voice part. You can hear how I just improvised and then transcribed my improvisation.
It's not the shade we should be past it. It's the light and it's the obstacle that casts
Then alto.
It's the heat that drives the
Tenor.
light. It's the fire it ignites. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's
Thank you, Sarah, for supporting my artistic decision. What we actually did for Gettysburg Children's Choir is we sampled Nina Simone in the beginning and had her sing the beginning of Feeling Good over top of the chords. Birds, birds flying high, you know how I feel. So we had Nina herself singing with our version, which was really cool. Maybe I'll play that for you later on at the end. Okay, so now at verse 3, let's give the choir a little more to do. That's enough ooh and ah and oh. We're getting bored. So this is kind of inspired by gospel choir, gospel singing. Because if you're thinking about writing a piece kind of in response to the movement for Black lives, what a great way to honor Black culture by singing music that came up in Black churches and singing in that style. So very frequently gospel music is 3 parts. It's usually SAT, or they would call it SAB, but it's usually 3 parts. And then I gave the bass as the actual bass line because it's a really groovy bass line. So I gave them a little testifying is what they would call it in gospel music. So you can hear them sing by themselves here.
It's not the song, it is the sing.
That part, this part kind of reminds me of like the choir responding to what the soloist is singing, kind of encouraging them, egging them on. And then I kind of adapted the text of the original solo. So it's the heaven of the human spirit ringing. The choir sings, we are the human spirit ringing. Give the choir more agency, to make them feel like they can change the world as they sing it. Then just a little more improvisation here. And then it's the rising. So we're going to sing rise and we're going to crescendo because that's good. Okay, and then these powers, very similar to the original chorus. Let's hear just the choir on those powers. 1 and 2.
Power.
1 and 2.
Power.
1 and 2.
Power.
Nice counter melody between soprano and tenor here. It makes it a little more interesting for them to sing. Very similar to the opening. Instead of just giving them an oh, I had them go, oh Lord, because it's, again, calling back to gospel music. We do that chorus again. This is a really high solo. So when I said earlier, like, know your choir, not many tenors can sing that. And like what you would likely do is give it to an alto and break it up. But that's kind of up to if it's your a cappella group or you're a choir director, you'd work together and figure that out. Second verse, we just do a little more expansion instead of oh and ah. So the soloist goes, it's not the war, but what's behind it. So the choir turns into a question. What's behind your war? Is it fear or more? So it took the word fear. I actually just noticed in presenting this that it did the wrong lyric. In Genius, it says it's the fear of fellow men, but I put the fear of foul men. I mean, it still has the same effect, but that's just interesting that I made the wrong word there. Now, notice how the basses don't just go do the whole time. So sometimes they can hop on and do some text and then go back. This is a fun bass part, though. This is fun do's for basses, where they get to sing along with the electric bass. The soloist goes, and everything that we're denied by keeping the divide. So the choir says, we won't be denied by the divide. We rise, we rise, we rise. Let's hear some of that.
We won't be denied by the divide. We rise, we rise, we rise.
Then chorus 2, pretty much the same as chorus 1. And that's okay because, I arranged this knowing that we were going to learn it on Zoom. So it's okay to repeat. If you wrote it well the first time, it should work the second time just as well. except a little bit extra here to transition us into the bridge, just extending this power. In the original, the vocals just stop and it's drums and organ, but I just had him continue that power into the bridge. And we give the bassist their moment. Yes. Yeah. And then I gave it to everyone. Now, notice how I put omit if too low for sopranos, because when I wrote a low F for sopranos, if you're a soprano and you look at that, your eyebrows go about 6 inches up your head because you're like, dude, I can't say. But some sopranos are like, whoa, cool, a chance to explore that part of my range. That's even low for some altos. So I knew that that wouldn't quite work. So the way around that is this tenor F is the same note as this alto F. So I know that tenors are going to be a little stronger because that's right in their chest voice, and sopranos and altos are going to be a little lighter, and then they'll blend in later on. I just thought it was a nice moment of unity for everyone to sing that. And we go do 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 do. I put a little pro tip here to sneak a breath in the next 2 measures because they have to go, because I felt guilty having them do 2 measures with a bunch of 16ths and then go right into the next O. Now, notationally, I did something that I don't usually do here, in that earlier I was talking about showing exactly where each beat is. For this one, I found it easier to read if I just chunked it into groups of doots. Because when you get to the last one, you land on beat 4. So here I'm not actually, it's technically there's beat 1, 1 E and there's beat 2, 2 E and the rest is beat 3. So then you have to go E and then there's beat 4. So this is actually a case where it's easier to read it the way I notate it, where you just do 4 groups of 2 and then you're on beat 4. When you have a syncopated rhythm like that, sometimes it's right to do that. Then we go, oh Lord. And then the last chorus, before the last chorus, we do we could cry instead of I could cry, a moment of unity for the choir, as if the act of singing the song has caused them to unify for change. And then we do a little more soprano at the end. This is kind of inspired by Moses Hogan spirituals. I don't know if you sung Moses Hogan spirituals. If not, you should. Where at the end, we'll have some fireworks soprano parts that go a lot higher and some more divisi. And I knew that this choir could handle that. And then I put optional descant for the very top because it gets pretty high. Let me see if I can find this last solo. Oh, here it comes. Then the big finish. Now, I recorded myself singing the whole tune because that's how I am. You don't have to do that if you're arranging. And remember how I said that GarageBand can do almost everything you need to? So here's where it can't make you sound like you can sing soprano 1. I mean, really, Logic can't, because I sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks when I do it. But I want to show you how, because it's a pretty interesting thing that I learned from Jacob Collier. If you don't know Jacob Collier, you should. He's a Logic user, and he streams himself like working in Logic. So by watching him, I figured out how to sing soprano 1 parts like this. And when you hear it by itself, you're like, yikes. But when you mix it with everything else, it kind of blends. And this is just a demo. This is not the final version. You'd have an actual soprano sing it. Now, the way that I did that is, sorry, echo, is this thing called Varispeed up here. So what this does, ST stands for semitones, which is how the Brits would say half steps. So what you do is you tune the whole project down until you can sing it. So let's do just a minor third down. 3 half steps down would be this. So it's a little easier. What is that? Ooh, that's an A. Yeah, I still don't have an A. So I need to go even lower. I probably record this at like -6 or something. Let's see. No. Still sounds chipmunky. Let's try like 8. That might have been it. That's starting to sound like my real voice. Still a little high. So you record it at that pitch, and then you crank it back up to 0, and then it sounds like you can sing soprano 1 when you can't. So if you're recording yourself, that's a good technique to make you sound like the whole choir. It works the same way for bass. Sing it, but I recommend that you sing it as low as you can with sounding good. Don't do it in octave, because then the more displacement you do, the more half steps, the more chipmunky you sound. Like that. Oh man, I sounded like I was screaming at the end of that. Wow, that doesn't make me feel self-conscious at all. So you might have seen this whole thing and been like, I could never do that. That seems like so much work. And I get that. But what you need to understand is, like, here I am after having done this for years. I have a couple degrees. I've had a lot of practice, hours and hours and hours. I went to public high school. I went to college in District 7. I didn't go to some world-renowned school. I didn't go to a Juilliard or something like that. I just worked hard. I kept at it. And the more you do it, the better you get. My route to get to where I am is maybe similar to what some of yours might be. The way to get better at this kind of stuff is to just do it. It's just like anything, practice it. The more you do it, the better you get. Start small. Just do a chorus here and there. Listen a lot is another big recommendation. And notice how other composers or arrangers make the sounds that they do. Groups to listen to like Voces 8. It's one of the best choirs in the world. The Aeolians of Oakwood University. If you've never heard of them, you should look them up. The Aeolians, like Aeolian mode. A-E-O-L-I-A-N-S. The Aeolians. Just type that in the chat. Yeah, Sarah says pay attention to music theory. Yes, I think I proved that from my triads too. I agree with that. Pentatonics, of course. Jacob Collier, like I mentioned before, go watch his Zooms on Logic. Pay attention to scores that you're singing in choirs and notice how they write for other voices, especially the voice parts that are not your own. You should sing through every part you write to make sure that it feels right in your voice. If possible, play it on piano. That might come later with more time. That's how I find mistakes. It's one thing to notate it or to sing it, but when you force yourself to sing it yourself, that's how you find where you colored outside the lines. Take stuff to your friends and have them sing it and have them tell you, and be humble when they tell you this doesn't work for my voice. Be open to that feedback. If you're a soprano writing for tenors and they tell you it doesn't fit their voice, take that and grow from it. Don't be too proud to not take feedback. And it can be a really rewarding thing. It's such a, it's at times it can be tedious and it can take forever, but when you finally finish something and you hear a choir sing it, it's like one of the most rewarding things ever. So I want to thank you so much again for hanging out this morning. You have just a little bit of time for questions. Anyone have any? Feel free to unmute or chat them.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, Jeffrey.
So I recently bought a microphone. I bought like a whole setup and stuff.
Nice.
And I'm trying to find DAWs to work with stuff, but I have a Windows, so I can't use GarageBand.
Yeah.
And I checked out Ableton Live, the light version, but you can't export Jaunt once you make it with the light version. And I also tried Soundwave, which is another one, and it's like giving me some trouble. So what do you think would be nifty to work on with the Windows?
For Windows, I would start maybe with a browser-based one. So try BandLab or Soundtrap.
All right.
Those you should be able to export from. And then you can start that, and that at least gets you going. And then if you think this is something you really want to continue, and you're being limited by the free softwares, might be time to invest.
Okay.
Maybe do the next level of Ableton, or Pro Tools might be a bit of a leap because that's a lot more expensive. But they do have educational pricing and student pricing for these kinds of things. So if you go on websites for paid things, look up student pricing, educational pricing. A lot of times they have to have you verify it. So you have to like send them an email from a school email address or something. And then they'll send you a code to like type in when you purchase to get a pretty big discount, like at least $100 off, maybe more.
Jeez, no, thanks.
Yeah, so that might be something to check out too.
All right.
Good question. Thanks. Any other questions from the crowd? All right. Well, thanks so much again for hanging out this morning. I hope that you at least had fun listening to me sing falsetto, and maybe learned something here along the way. So I think the next session is 12:30. So if you want to take your lunch, and then we'll be back here at 12:30, not to this link, to the link that they emailed you. And thanks again, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. See ya.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the support.